Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to week 3 of the Virtual Professional Development Series. Today, we will have our specialist, Nirva LaFortune, join us, who will be delivering an hour-long webinar on the Imposter Syndrome. It is very real. Nirva LaFortune is Assistant Director of the Curricular Resource Center and Dean of the College Tutorial Program at Brown University. And as if these roles were not enough to keep her or anyone else busy, she is also currently running for Mayor of Providence. Nirva LaFortune is no stranger to overwork, over everything. And I am so pleased, I am so honored to welcome her today. Yep, here we go.
Hello, everyone. Thank you. Thank you so much, Dr. Astroni, for such a wonderful presentation. And yes, so today we're going to talk about imposter syndrome. And although this is a webinar, I'm very used to doing this where I engage with my audience, but we'll still have opportunities to be able to engage with each other and for me to answer any questions that you may have. So I'm going to start my video, and please use the chat feature to react. I might ask a question. Please use the thumbs up. We're going to have fun with this, right? Because imposter syndrome is such a heavy topic. And also, if you have any questions, please feel free to use the chat as well to post your questions. But more importantly, this is about engagement. This is about talking about an issue that impacts so many of us. So let's get started. And I was just going to say thank you again, Dr. Astroni, for the introduction. I'm part of the Dean of the College's office, and I'm the Assistant Director of the Curricular Resource Center. So you can come to the CRC to see me if you have any questions after this presentation. And I'm excited to get started. All right, so I'm going to share my screen. All right. So does everyone is able to see my screen? I'm not sure if I could see your reactions.
You look good.
All right, perfect. All right. So today the conversation is going to be focused on navigating imposter syndrome, because the reality is imposter syndrome exists. It's not going anywhere. It's something that I also have had to learn to navigate. And there are days where I still sometimes wake up and feel like, oh my goodness, I'm not good enough for this. And so it's about just some key tools that you may need to navigate imposter syndrome so that you can be able to move forward in your research, in your studies, whatever, in your career, whatever you choose to do. Right. So the goal of this presentation, or the goals, is to define imposter syndrome, identify characteristics of imposter syndrome, explore implications, and also to share resources to support and empower students, researchers, everyone. So I'm sure some of you have said these things, or I've heard your friends or someone you know who might say things like, the other students in my class are smarter than me. I haven't scheduled an appointment with my concentration advisor because I don't want to ask a stupid question, or even I don't want to ask a stupid question with to my PI. My advisor has no idea who I really am. Any day now, he's going to figure out I don't belong here. I'm not sure I have the necessary skills for this internship or research opportunity. I feel like a fraud. If I'm successful, why do I feel like a fake? I'm not as good as other people think I am. I've had them fooled now, but I'm maybe found out later. Obviously, I'm in this position because my abilities have been overestimated, or I did not want people to think I thought I was something I was not. And also, my family expects me to make some massive impact upon this world, and I live in constant fear of disappointing them. Uh, if you want to use the chat, share with me some of the things that you might feel or you've heard that relates to imposter syndrome. And I'm checking out the chat as we're doing this as well. So just feel free to input information in the chat. All right. All right. So before we start talking about imposter syndrome, the first thing I want to define is stereotype threat. So what is stereotype threat? Claude Steele and Joshua Arson in their 1995 article titled Stereotype Threat and the Intellectual Test Performance of African Americans, published in the Journal of Personality and Social Psychology, defines stereotype threat as where people feel themselves to be at risk of conforming to stereotypes about groups that they identify as belonging to. The phenomenon of stereotype threat as being in a situation or doing something to which a negative stereotype about an identity is relevant. So now we're going to define imposter syndrome. So what is imposter syndrome and how it relates to stereotype threat? So imposter syndrome is an intense feeling of intellectual authenticity that is frequently experienced in high achieving individuals. So sometimes the people who are experiencing imposter syndrome are some of the most brilliant, smartest people in the world. The overwhelming feeling that you don't deserve your success or fear of failure. So there's this feeling that you might be in a space, or you have access, or you're doing this internship or research opportunity, but you still feel like you're in this amazing position, yet you still feel as if you don't belong there. Or you have this fear of disappointing others, or you may fail. It convinces an individual that they're not as intelligent, creative, or talented as they may seem, excuse me about the typo, and doubting own excellence, even as you are getting generally positive feedback. So I'm sure some of you have, received positive feedback when someone may tell you, oh my goodness, this paper was well written, but might give you some constructive feedback, but then you feel as if that you didn't do it well enough, or you're a failure. That's all imposter syndrome. And the definition was coined by Clance and Imes in 1978. All right, so when we think about imposter syndrome, we also have to look at the various categories of imposter syndrome. There's attributing, the tendency to attribute success to luck or to other external reasons and not to your own internal abilities. So it's like when you applied for this early identification research opportunity. It was very competitive and you got in. Rather than accepting that you got in because of your own brilliance, because of your own abilities, you may say something like, oh, it was by luck. Maybe it's because this person gave me an excellent recommendation. I wouldn't have gotten in if it weren't for them. But the reality is yes, that recommendation helped. Perhaps it gave you a little boost, but you're here because of your internal abilities, because you're supposed to be here, because of your excellence. Feeling, the belief that one does not deserve success, academic or professional, and that somehow others have been deceived into thinking otherwise. This goes together with a fear of being found out, discovered, or unmasked. So it's that internal feeling that one may have where you're doubting your ability, or you feel that if someone discovers you, then you're going to be, exposed. Discounting, a tendency to downplay or discount your achievement, your ability, or your own success. So let's say you submit a proposal and you get grant funding and everyone is congratulating you, rather than, accept it and take it all in, and accept all these accolades. Instead, you might say something like, well, it's by luck. I'm not that good. I'm not that smart. It's not me. It's because of something else. It's downplaying or discounting your own ability, your own brilliance, your own ideas. And all of that is doubting one's own excellence. And that is imposter syndrome. All right. This is one of my favorite graphics because, imposter syndrome, when you're experiencing imposter syndrome, there's reality and then there's perception. The reality is that you're getting through, not even getting by. You're making strides. You're in an upward trajectory. You're doing well in your research. Yes, you might hit a little roadblock, but things are going well. You're getting the support that you need. Your PI is excited about the work that you're doing. You're making all these discoveries in your lab. So you're moving up. Yet the way you see it is that you haven't hit a goal. Your goal is it's not attainable. It's not reachable. So that's the difference between reality and perception. And a lot of times with imposter syndrome, it plays tricks with our minds. What is actually happening is not what we necessarily see. So when you're experiencing that, it's important to kind of take a break, reassess yourself, look at some of your accomplishments, figure out, why you're feeling this way. Sometimes you need a little moral support and encouragement. Sort that out from your mentor or your friends or even your PI. And there's situations where you might be in a circumstance where, your PI might not be as supportive, or the lab that you're in, you might not know what to do or what questions to ask, because that whole concept of hidden curriculum, that's real. And it's something that a lot of people of marginalized communities experience on a regular basis. But that's why it's important to also surround yourself with cheerleaders, but who are also going to hold you accountable. So there's reality and there's perception. So when you're feeling as if things are not going your way or you're not meeting your goals, take time out to ask yourself why you're feeling this way. Go back, look at the goals that you've accomplished, and then compare that to what you're feeling, so that you can try to get back to what is really happening, and it's that you're doing okay. Feeling of otherness. So a lot of times you might be in a space and you feel isolated. And imposter syndrome plays a role in that, because you feel like you don't belong, you feel like you're the other. So it's whether you feel as though they do not, or it's whether they feel as though they do not belong, imposter syndrome, or they feel as though they must prove they belong, stereotype threat. It's still a feeling of being othered, and it influences how one navigates spaces. So when you're having this feeling of otherness, you might go into this lab and you might not have the confidence that you should have, because you're going in already feeling as if you don't belong there, you're not good enough, or people are going to judge you because of the school you came from, who you are, your identity. And in many ways, you're isolating yourself. And so one thing to be mindful of is how imposter syndrome and stereotype threat plays a role in making you feel like another, where, yes, sometimes there are circumstances that might make you feel that way because the culture of the environment might not be as inclusive and as receptive or open. But it's also important to ask yourself, am I feeling this way because I'm doubting my own skills? I'm doubting my own ability, or it's because I feel that because I'm here, or I look a certain way, I'm not going to be taken seriously. I'm not going to be accepted. But then if it's like the culture of the space, it's important to talk about it. Talk to someone you trust. go to your advisor, your mentor, your PI, but have an honest conversation. But more importantly, do not be afraid to also step out of your own comfort zone. And when you're feeling like the other or the feeling of otherness, try to figure out how you can navigate the space, how you can build up your confidence so that you can maximize your experience. All right. So, how does imposter syndrome impact student success? So, imposter syndrome can appear in multiple ways. Academic and social struggles. Students suffering from imposter syndrome might not only struggle in the class, but also become socially isolated. They struggle in labs, they struggle in internship opportunities, potential long-term impact beyond graduation. Students with imposter syndrome are more likely to make ill-fitting career choices. So you might make a career choice just because you thought that you weren't good enough. So rather than aiming high, rather than applying to that institution that you really wanted to go to, rather than applying for this prestigious fellowship opportunity or research opportunity, you doubt yourself. So you don't apply to that. And then you find yourself in a space where you're not happy. You're not valued, or it's not challenging your intellectual ability. And so it's really, really important when you're feeling that imposter syndrome creeping in, you check it. Because it could cause you to make some decisions that impact your trajectory. And experience burnout, both in college, in career, in research. So imposter syndrome could also make you feel like you're not good enough. So you're always trying to prove yourself that you're good enough, that you can do this. So you might find yourself taking on more work, staying at the labs later than everybody else. And you're tired. You're not enjoying the experience the way you should. You're not having fun. Your life is imbalanced. So it's important that, again, you check yourself if you're feeling that way, because what ends up happening is that you burn yourself out. So you're too tired to do what you really need to do, but also to focus on your own work. Prone to procrastination. I know when I'm feeling overwhelmed, I take a little bit more time to tackle a goal, to tackle a project. And so what happens is when you're taking on all this extra work, you're tired, you procrastinate when it comes down to doing your own work, or you might feel as if you can't do it, you're not going to do it right. And so you're afraid to start the project. So remember that imposter syndrome could also cause you to procrastinate. Interpret constructive criticism as proof of your inaptitude rather than using it to improve skills and knowledge. Look, constructive criticism is hard sometimes, right? It's hard to take. It could be challenging to process. And some of the most brilliant people have a hard time taking in constructive feedback. But just because your mentor or somebody who really cares for you, who's invested in your success, when they're giving you constructive feedback, it doesn't mean that you're not good enough. It doesn't mean that you don't belong here. It doesn't mean that you can't improve these skills. All it means is that, listen, um, you know, this is where you're thriving in, but these are some areas that perhaps you can you can use a little bit more development. And so the question to ask is, well, what are some things, what are some tools and resources that can aid me or support me in developing these skills or gaining more knowledge in this area? But it's not an attack on who you are. It's not an attack on your skills. It's just, trying to help you move to the next level. Now, there might be a situation again where you might be in an environment that is not nurturing. And so it's important to ask questions to make sure that the feedback that's being given to you is actually going to help. And one thing that someone always told me is that there are times when there are people who have a lot of opinions and a lot of feedback. You don't have to take all of it in, but take the things that you need and leave the things that you don't out. So you have also should I have to learn how to balance that because there's going to be situations that you're in where you're not going to be in the most supportive environment, but you still have to get through. So it's figuring out what are some things that that person is saying. What are some things that could benefit me, that could have a positive impact on the work that I'm doing, or can help me build certain skills and a knowledge base to move forward. And then the things that might be a little bit hurtful, that are not constructive, figure out how to leave it out. And also find someone, a mentor, a friend. It could be a faculty member. It could be your advisor. It could be someone in the Curricular Resource Center or one of these academic centers within your institution. But find someone or a friend, a peer mentor, a peer advisor that could be your sounding board so that they can help you kind of sift through all of that feedback so that you can learn how to identify the things that are constructive and that can build you. So, in what ways can imposter syndrome show up, right? Because sometimes imposter syndrome shows up, but we don't necessarily know that it's imposter syndrome. So, self doubt, that's imposter syndrome, a sense of incompetence, thinking that you're not competent or you don't know. That's can be imposter syndrome. Frequently comparing yourself to others. Oh, so and so just got recognized for their research, or they ran. They ran this sample and they got the results that they wanted. I'm trying to run my sample and I can't get the results that I want. So this person is better than me. I'm not doing. I'm messing up somewhere. I'm not good enough to be here. Low self-esteem, self-worth, coming in and not having confidence. Fear, anxiety, always fearing that someone is going to find you out, or you're not good enough, or you're not going to do well, or you're going to disappoint others. It's about you. It's about the work that you're doing. Yes, right. You're in a lab. You're working with other people. You're working on a project or research. Yes, you want to make your team proud, but you're also doing it for yourself. And it's a learning experience as well, and you should have fun throughout the process. Immobility, not being able to move around, stress, burnout, doing too much, getting stressed and overwhelmed, getting burnt out, being tired because you're taking on too much because of that fear, because of that anxiety, because of that self-doubt, because you're trying to compare yourself to others, because you're trying to prove that you're worthy and and you're good enough. Underperformance, you might not be able to perform at the capacity that you should be performing because you're weighed down by all of these things. Hard to accept praise or compliments. I'm sorry. It's when someone gives you an accolade or a compliment, rather than accept it, you respond by saying again, ah, yeah, that was by luck. I'm not that great. Uh, Look in the mirror every single day before you go into the lab, before you start your research, before you write your paper, before you run your experiment, and say to yourself, I got this. I can do this. And you know what? If it doesn't work out the first time, I'll do it again. But I'm going to get where I need to be. So you have to figure out how to also motivate yourself. Inability to enjoy accomplishments. So when you are successful, rather than enjoy it and celebrate, you're thinking about the next thing. You're not taking a moment to just take it all in and take a deep breath. So those are all ways that imposter syndrome can show up. All right. So here are some kind of tools or tips when navigating imposter syndrome. Recognize those signs, the signs that we talked about: self-doubt, um, stress, all of these things. When you start feeling that way, when you start doubting yourself, when you're not taking, when you're seeing constructive feedback as an attack on you, or that you're not good enough, you're not smart enough, those might be signs of imposter syndrome. So make sure that you recognize those signs when you're feeling that way. Perfectionism is not the answer. I struggle with that. We want everything to be perfect. Like even in the slide, I went through it like 5 times and I saw like 2 typos and I'm like, oh my goodness. You know, there are times where you might miss something. Yes, missing something can be quite critical and it may impact the work that you're doing. But there's always an opportunity to go back, and none of us are perfect. So being perfect is not the answer. Doing your best is the answer. Aiming high is the answer, but perfectionism is not. Identify support. You need cheerleaders, mentors, people that you trust, people that are going to hold you accountable. They can be your peers, they can be your professors, they can be your PI, they can be your advisor. But it's important to identify support when you're excuse me, when you're experiencing imposter syndrome. You're not alone. Some of the most brilliant people experience imposter syndrome. In fact, I wouldn't be surprised if your advisor, the lead in your lab or your PI also experiences imposter syndrome. You're not alone. It's something that's common, and everyone has experienced some level of imposter syndrome. Be kind to yourself. Show yourself grace. Um, every time you fall or something doesn't go right, that's an opportunity for you to try it again. And maybe it doesn't go right a second time, but you shouldn't give up. And it's okay to not be successful the first time. But just remember, you shouldn't give up. So be kind to yourself, give yourself grace. Encourage seeking opportunities. Encourage yourself, encourage others to seek opportunities. One of the things that imposter syndrome can do, it might prevent you from pursuing something, an opportunity that would be amazing for you. I remember when I worked in corporate, and the company that I was working for did a complete reorg. And there were positions or in contracts that were being eliminated or were moving to kind of the sister company. And there was someone in the company that was really impressed by my work and came to me. It was a manager of a department and said, Nirva, I've worked with you and whatever happens, I would love for you to apply to this position within my division. And I had an interview set up. This was years ago. I was in my 20s. And I canceled at the last minute because I didn't think that I was good enough for that position. I thought I was going to bomb the interview. And the reality is, the person encouraged me to apply because they recognized that position was for me and they were going to advocate for me. But instead of taking that opportunity or seizing that opportunity, I allowed my self-doubt, imposter syndrome to get in the way. And so I missed out on it. And to this day, I still, think about where would my life be, if I took on that opportunity. But hey, things happen. I live and I've lived and I've learned. But I did tell myself that I'm not going to allow that to happen again. So don't miss out on a great opportunity because of imposter syndrome, and don't be afraid to seek out opportunities, even if it's something that might challenge you. And even if someone tells you, maybe you should think about it next year, it doesn't hurt to apply, because now you even if you don't get it, you know the process, you understand it, you went through it, you learned from it, and then when you apply the following year, you can submit an excellent proposal. Distinguish humility and fear. Being humbled is one thing, right? Having fear is another. Like, you don't have to be, arrogant about your accomplishments. Being humbled is, keeping your foot to the ground, even though you're flying as high as you can. But when you're having fear, and you're afraid to do something, or you have fear that someone is going to find you out, that's imposter syndrome. So it's important to distinguish humility and fear. Track success. Keep a journal, keep a record of your accomplishments. When you do, when something good happens, keep a record of that. So when you're doubting yourself, when you're feeling a bit of imposter syndrome, you can go back to those things. One of the things that I've done for myself is whenever someone sends me a card with words of encouragement, I keep that. Or if I accomplish something, someone sent me an email, I'll hold on to that. So when I'm feeling doubtful, I'll go back to it. And another thing that I've done, which I could continue to do with my students, is at the start of every their time at Brown, or their experience, or working with me as an advisor, I have them write a letter to themselves. And I ask them, why they're here. What keeps them grounded? What motivates them? What influences them? What are the things that excites them? So maybe write a letter to yourself to remind yourself why you're doing that work, why you're here, what is your support system, so that when you're doubting yourself, you can go back to the letter, so that you're reminded of why you're in this space. And embrace the feeling. Listen, when you're experiencing imposter syndrome, you don't have to shy away from it. You don't have to ignore it. You don't have to pretend that it doesn't exist. Everyone experiences imposter syndrome. It's here. It's not going anywhere. So it's learning how to navigate imposter syndrome. So face it head on. When you're feeling like an imposter, say to yourself, I'm feeling like an imposter today. I'm feeling like an imposter today. So what am I going to do to navigate this feeling so that I can move forward, so that I can get up, so I can go to the lab, I can go to class, I can ask a question in class, in the classroom or in the lab, even if I'm feeling intimidated. Embrace that feeling. It's okay. All right. So this is one of my favorite quotes. And it captures, the whole notion of imposter syndrome. Even someone as brilliant as Maya Angelou experienced imposter syndrome. She says, I have written 11 books, but each time I think, oh, they're going to find out now. I've run a game on everybody and they're going to find me out. So even someone as brilliant as Maya Angelou has also experienced imposter syndrome. So I'm going to take a moment to answer any questions, but first, just remember, be aware of language choices. If you like things like, if you were lucky to receive an A, if you want to be competitive, these are the things you have to do. You're not good enough. You don't belong here. Be aware of some of that language choice, those things that we say, things that people say to you as well. So when they're saying these things, it's also okay to call them out, to say, hey, this doesn't make me feel good. When you say these things, it makes me doubt myself. So don't be afraid to say that. Focus on strengths and accomplishments. Focus on your strengths and your accomplishments first. And then you could always go back on the areas that you can further develop. And always remember, you're good enough. You belong here. If you didn't belong here, you wouldn't be in the place that you're in. And there's always opportunity to grow. And if someone provides constructive feedback, it doesn't mean that you don't belong. It doesn't mean that you're not good enough. It's just constructive. So take what you need and leave what you don't out. So any questions? And that's it.
So I first have to say thank you so much for this incredible overview. Your description was so detailed, it was palpable. Like I could feel the emotion in the way that you were describing how imposter syndrome impacts. And there are some questions that I would like to present. Dem asks you, could this imposter syndrome be seen as a negative side to humbleness, as in a negative extreme?
Could this be seen as a negative side of humbleness? As a, it can be seen as a negative side of humbleness, because we talked about, humbleness, humility, and fear. So sometimes people mistake fear or doubt with being humble. So it's up to you to figure out or to identify if it is like imposter syndrome that you're feeling, because yes, no one wants to come off and say like, to be arrogant, but you know what? You should be able to also say to yourself, I got this. I'm all that. I can do this. I'll share something. My daughter, years ago, she was running a race. So we all run in my family. I'm the slowest. I'm not, my kids, my son is turning 20 in September. He's a sprinter. He ran in high school. My daughter is in middle school now. She's really fast. We actually went on a run earlier, and I was like, I can't keep up. It was short run, but I was like, slow down. I run marathons, you sprint. But I remember she was running this race, and we couldn't find her shoes. We had to get there. So she wore a pair of shoes that were 2 sizes smaller than her shoes. And we got there, and she was also the smallest kid. And at the starting line, I watched her, and she's saying to the other kids, I'm going to win. I'm going to win. I got this. And I'm like, stop saying that. Like, don't do that. You're being arrogant. And as she's running, she's saying to herself, I got this. There was a hill, there was a pretty steep incline. And she's saying, I got this. You got this, Nairi Simone, you got this. And she came in first place. So I feared for her that she was being arrogant, but she wasn't saying in a mean way. She was being playful, and she was just being confident because she came in that race with shoes smaller than her feet and came in saying, I got this. I'm going to win. So it's okay to have confidence. You can still be humbled. Right after the race, she gave everybody high five. And when she finished, there was like, a couple of people who were behind, and she was cheering them on. But you can still be grounded, but also have confidence. But it is when it's fear, when you're feeling that it's not humility, and you're trying not to highlight your accomplishments, that can be a negative side to humbleness if you can't distinguish between the two.
Thank you. That's so helpful to distinguish the fear from humbleness. Yeah. So we have another question. How can you distinguish criticism that is to better you versus criticism that is othering?
Yeah. That's a challenge. That one is challenging because when you think about academia, higher education, and institutions of learning and research, and you look at the demographic of people who are in that space, a lot of times you might find yourself in a space where people don't look like you. You might be the only one. So there are assumptions, right? These stereotype threats that are made, and assumptions that you have about yourself because of your own identity. So you're coming in, with these feeling like an imposter, and also like stereotype threat playing a role in your own perception of yourself. And so one of the things that you can do when someone does give you constructive feedback is, if they say something that makes you feel uncomfortable, ask clarifying questions, right? Make sure you understand what they're saying, but just ask clarifying questions. And perhaps people might make, comments, right? Unconscious bias is real. That they might make certain comments or might say certain things that they might not say to others. So it's important to ask those clarifying questions, because in a way, you're kind of like checking them. And maybe they'll recognize that perhaps the way they provided the feedback wasn't as constructive as they assumed that it was. And also, it's sometimes okay to say, you provided me with this feedback. This is how I took it, and I know that this is not necessarily what you meant. So can you please provide me with a little bit more details? or explanation, because I do want to improve this area, but I just need for you to clarify what you tried to say. So always ask for clarifying questions, and also don't be afraid to tell someone, um, this is how I took it, right? This is how I interpreted this. And so that way the person can kind of refrain, how they provided that feedback. And then there are people who are just going to say what they need to say. So take what you need and leave what you don't out.
That is such great advice. Thank you. So does saying the positive things to ourselves have a subconscious effect on our perception?
Absolutely. It does have a subconscious effect on our perception of ourselves. It's certain, that's what I'm assuming. It certainly does. You have to be your biggest, what I've learned is that you have to be your biggest cheerleader. And doubt can impact us. That little bit of doubt can cause us, or that little bit of fear, or that little bit of imposter syndrome can completely halt, right, our ability to move forward. So that, those positive things that you say to yourselves, they help you, they motivate you. Everyone is different. So you just, that might work for you. For some people, it's playing Beyonce or, some motivating music. But you just have to find what works for you. It might be calling someone that that you trust, that can encourage you, or going to a peer. But you just have to find what works best for you. But it does have an impact, I think, some sort of effect of your subconsciousness.
Yeah, I mean, it's similar to what you were just telling us about your daughter. I'm going to win this race.
Yeah.
And she won the race.
Because she was able to see the finish line. She was able to see that she was going to win it. So if you start a project, or if you go into a research lab or into a space already telling yourself that you don't belong there and you're doubting yourself, you're going to struggle from start to finish. But if you go in saying to yourself, I got this. And even if I face adversity, I still have it. I still got this. I just have to recognize the tools, the resources that can help me navigate that. But it does impact you. Yes.
Thank you. So we have a question from Katrina. She asks, how can we tell if someone else may be experiencing imposter syndrome and help them out?
Earlier, I mentioned recognize the signs. So, some of the things that people may say, and I'm going back to, my slide, in ways that it can show up. If you hear someone saying, I don't think I'm good enough for this, that might be a sign of imposter syndrome. Or you might know someone who every single day, they're the last person in the lab, not because they're working on this specific project, their project, but it's because they're taking on additional work because they're trying to prove that they're good enough. Maybe like one thing that you can do, because you also don't want to put people on the spot and make them uncomfortable, you can ask questions. You can say, hey, why are you doing this? Allow them to recognize their own behavior, right? Because people have to have ownership of the things that they're doing, to recognize it and to also adjust themselves. So ask questions, but also, if it's of someone you care about, you love, a friend, sometimes a little word of encouragement when you recognize it without even saying anything, by saying you got this, by cheering them on when they have an accomplishment, also helps. But ask questions. Listen to things that they say about their own self-worth, or if they have fear about tackling a task, or they procrastinate. Ask why, and ask questions like, what are the barriers? What are some things that you need to support you in what you're doing? So it's important to listen to what they say, but also help them figure out what are some tools and resources that they need to navigate it.
Thank you. So we have a question. How do you power through in an environment that is not very friendly towards you?
Yeah. I've experienced that in the past, and I'm sure many of you have as well. Um, and during the presentation, I also mentioned that there might be environments where the culture is not inclusive, is not welcoming, and there are biases that exist because of who you are, because of how you look, or assumptions that are made about you without even knowing your ability. That's why it's important to have a mentor or an advisor, someone that can be your sounding board, someone that can help you navigate, through difficult situations, can give you some advice in how to navigate um, difficult conversations as well. But also, finding again tools and resources that might assist you. And sometimes it's also okay to take yourself out of an environment that's not enriching, that is actually more harmful for you. But have a conversation with your advisor, have a conversation with your mentor, have a conversation with someone you trust, so that you can look at your options before you make a decision. Because there are times too where those environments can cause us to quit. I know students. I've had students. I remember I had a student in engineering who didn't have the most supportive advisor, and was the only Black woman in that particular area. This was a long time ago, and shared that they wanted to quit. And I said, you can't, no, no. Do you want to quit because you don't want to do this, or you don't want to quit because of the environment? You want to quit because of the environment that you're in? And they're like, I don't feel supported in the environment that I'm in, and I'm just going to give up on a PhD. I don't think that I can complete my PhD. So what I ended up doing was telling her is, listen, you need to talk to the head of the department, explain to them what's happening. And I connected them with some faculty members who can be supportive, and some advisors to also advocate for them. But before you just completely quit or remove yourself from the situation, look at your options, look at your resources, talk to a mentor, your advisor, that someone you trust, so that they can help you navigate through that. Because there's throughout life, there's going to be many environments that you're in that's not friendly towards you, that's going to tell you you don't belong here, that's going to make you want to quit. I mean, look at the numbers, the percentage of people of color who hold PhDs or advanced degrees in general, the percentage of people who have access or who have gone through some prestigious fellowship opportunity, in comparison to their white counterparts. It's imbalanced. So don't allow anyone to push you out of something that you deserve, but find ways to navigate it. And then there are times where you need to find someone else. You need to find another lab or another mentor, but talk to the people who are supportive to help you navigate that, and to be also advocates for you.
So important. So I love the next question. Do you have any suggested readings on this topic? And
yeah. So Claude Steele, actually, hold on one second. I have the book right here. So this book, Claude Steele's, which focuses on how stereotypes affects us and what we can do. I'm gonna write it in the chat. This might be like a really, great book to help you, recognize imposter syndrome. But also there are a lot of other books that are not necessarily focused on imposter syndrome, but also can help you recognize, some of the issues that exist within our society, perceptions that people may have. Those books like How to Be an Anti-Racist. What else? I'm looking back. So You Want to Talk About Race is another one. There's The Privileged Poor. But also, it's also good to read books that are motivating, like with words of inspiration, things that will keep you motivated. One of the things that I do for myself in my office, you might find sticky pads, like sticky notes, excuse me, with like my favorite quote or a verse. I'm Christian, so with a verse on it, or something that inspires me, or something that someone said and I remembered. I might write it down and hang it up. But one of the things I'll do too is that I'll send a follow-up with a list of some resources, some books that you can read, some videos, and additional resources that can help you have a better understanding of what imposter syndrome is and how to navigate it. So I'll do that as a follow-up.
Thank you so much. So I can post those in our Google Classroom for the students. Thank you so much. The next question. When did you first learn about imposter syndrome and how did that affect your life?
Yeah. I did not, I actually never heard of the term imposter syndrome until I came to Brown as when I was a grad student at Brown and started working at Brown as well. So my freshman year of college, I went to an HBCU. I failed like 3 of my core courses, but none of my professors told me I didn't belong there. In fact, one of my professors told me that I need to get it to, like, she was like, you're too smart for this. And it was because there were these final exams that even if you did well, if you didn't do well on the final exam, you failed the course. And I've always struggled with tests. And so I remember my professor, I was walking somewhere and like kind of like pulled me aside and said, what is going on? Who do I need to call? But I never felt that I didn't belong because the space that I was in always reminded me that I belonged there. And also there were people who looked like me, who were learning as well. There were definitely, some differences in terms of like socioeconomics, et cetera. But I was in a space where I knew that I belonged there. And I went to Temple for undergrad, which was quite diverse. But it was, when I started as a grad student, I'll never forget a professor once told me that they see themselves as they saw my GRE score. I don't know how they had access to it. So saw my GRE score and it was a quantitative program. So I have a graduate degree in urban education policy. So you're taking statistics, economics, and I did not do well. So I came into that person's class and that person already had an assumption that I wasn't going to do well. They doubted me before I even started, and told me that they saw themselves as a gatekeeper of the institution and that they're going to decide who makes it in and who makes it out, and almost making it seem as if I slipped in. It got to the point where I thought something was wrong with me. And I went to my doctors and I told my doctor that I had a learning disability, which was really hard. And, I do struggle with some things. I'm a lead poison survivor. So I had severe lead poison when I was a kid. But I've always studied. I had to work hard, but I did well. And so that's when I started learning more about imposter syndrome and I started doing my own research about it. And I realized that I was doubting myself and that this person made me believe, and also I started to believe that I wasn't good enough, even though I got in just like everybody else. But then I felt like I didn't belong there because of this perception, and also like that this perception that I created of myself, which wasn't true. It wasn't accurate. And also stereotype threat because I came in and this person had this assumption about me, right? So I had to learn how to navigate that. I found a mentor, multiple mentors actually. And when there were times that I was doubting myself, they were, they held me accountable, but they also motivated me. I had also my peers who were very supportive and we're still friends to this day, that were quite supportive as well. And I think also what played an additional role is that there were only 2 during that cohort. In our cohort, there were 2 people who had children. One, I had to work, so everyone else was like full time. And I was the only, it was myself and somebody else. We were moms, but this person was doing it full time where I had to work, still be a mom, and complete my graduate degree. So that's when it showed up for me. But I had to figure out how to navigate it, because I realized if I didn't, then I would never graduate.
Thank you. So one of the students has commented, thank you. I appreciate your sharing your insights and your truth. And I believe that that sentiment is probably resounding across the entire student population, or individuals watching this, this series, this webinar. Your description about the syndrome is incredible. Your tips, your guidelines, your ways to overcome or manage, and your personal stories have just, I feel, been empowering. And I feel that the students are feeling that as well. So
thank you so much.
No, thank you so much. And I will post those reading suggestions on our Google Classroom. And on behalf of all of the virtual professional development programmers and our office and the Leadership Alliance, and I feel confident that I speak on behalf of the students, we want to wish you good luck in your mayorship pursuit. It actually, I might move to Providence and get elected, because your authenticity and everything that you bring is just inspiring and motivational. So thank you.
I appreciate that. Thank you. Thank you very much.
You're very welcome. Thank you.
Thank you. Have a wonderful day.
Thank you.
Bye.
You too.